This is the story of a mother who stood alone when the world judged her. A woman who chose her children when society turned its back. A mother whose love was stronger than gossip, stronger than shame, stronger than fear. Set in a quiet European town where everyone knows your name and every mistake becomes public. This story follows Elena, a simple woman with an extraordinary heart. After being abandoned by her husband, she faces whispers, closed doors, and cruel stares. Yet she refuses to let reputation decide her children's future. This is not just a family story. It is a story of sacrifice, silent courage, and unconditional love. A story about what it truly means to be a mother. If you believe in emotional true stories about strong women and real-life struggles, please support her Courage Lab by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us share more stories that heal, inspire, and empower. Now I start the story. The town was small, the kind of place where church bells marked time and neighbors watched from behind lace curtains. Elena had lived there all her life. Cobblestone streets, flower boxes on windows, old cafes that smelled of bread and coffee, and people who remembered everything. She once had what looked like a perfect life. A modest apartment near the river, a husband who worked at the local factory, and 3 children who filled the rooms with laughter. On Sunday mornings they walked together to the bakery, the youngest holding Elena's hand, the older 2 racing ahead. People smiled at them then. They called her lucky. But luck can disappear quietly. It began with arguments late at night. Voices lowered so the children would not hear. Money problems. Long silences at the dinner table. Her husband grew distant, then cruel, then absent. One winter evening he packed a single suitcase, stood in the doorway, and said he could not live this life anymore. No apology, no explanation, just a closed door. Elena stood frozen in the hallway while the children slept. That night she did not cry. She sat on the kitchen floor until morning came. At first she believed he would return. Weeks passed, then months. The factory confirmed he had moved to another city with another woman. And just like that, Elena became something else in the eyes of the town. Not a wife, not part of a family. A woman left behind. Whispers followed her in grocery aisles. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Parents pulled their children closer when Elena's walked past. Some said she must have failed as a wife. Others said she was weak. A few hinted at things they could not prove. Her reputation changed faster than her circumstances. But rent still needed to be paid. School lunches still cost money. Shoes still wore out. Elena found work cleaning offices at night. She stocked shelves early in the morning. She stitched clothes for neighbors who pretended not to see her during the day. Sleep became a luxury. Exhaustion a constant companion. Her hands grew rough. Her back ached. Her eyes carried shadows. Yet every evening she returned home with a smile. She warmed soup, helped with homework, listened to stories about playground dramas and classroom friends. She made games from nothing, turned cardboard into castles, and bedtime into a moment of safety. The children felt the change even if they could not name it. They noticed fewer treats, simpler meals, longer hours alone. But they also noticed something else. Their mother never complained. When the landlord threatened eviction, she stood taller. When teachers hinted that her children might be a distraction, she thanked them politely and asked how she could help when neighbors avoided her. She nodded with dignity. Inside she was breaking in quiet pieces. Some nights she cried into a pillow so no one would hear. Some mornings she stared at herself in the mirror wondering how much more she could carry. Then came the day that changed everything. Her oldest son returned from school with red eyes. A classmate had told him that his mother was a disgrace, that his father left because of her, that their family was something to be ashamed of. Elena knelt in front of him, held his face in her hands, and promised him something she did not yet know how to fulfill. She told him, "You are never a mistake, and neither am I." That night Elena made a decision that would cost her what little acceptance she still had, a decision that would define the rest of her life. She chose her children over her reputation. And this was only the beginning. The morning after Elena promised her son that they were not mistakes, she woke before dawn. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft breathing of her children. She sat at the small kitchen table with a cup of cold tea in her hands, thinking about the words that had come so easily the night before, and the reality that waited outside their door. Promises were simple. Keeping them was hard. Elena knew something had to change. Working 3 jobs was slowly breaking her. And still it was not enough. There were weeks when she counted coins at the counter, choosing between bus fare and milk. The school had sent another notice about unpaid lunch fees. The landlord had left another message. And her youngest needed new shoes. She felt trapped between exhaustion and responsibility. That morning she walked her children to school, kissed each of them on the forehead, and stood watching until they disappeared through the gates. Then she went somewhere she had avoided for months. The social services office. The building was gray and cold, with plastic chairs and tired faces in the waiting room. Elena sat quietly holding a folder of documents, pay stubs, rent notices, school letters. When her name was called, she stepped into a small office and told her story to a woman who typed without looking up. She explained that her husband had left, that she was working constantly, that she was trying, that she only needed temporary help. The woman nodded professionally, asked questions, checked boxes. Then came the words Elena had feared. To receive housing support and food assistance, you must officially register as a single mother with no partner support. Elena understood what that meant. It meant the town would know. It meant her situation would be written in records. It meant she would no longer be seen as unlucky. She would be labeled. She hesitated. She thought of the whispers, the church looks, the parents who already avoided her. She thought of her children eating dry bread for dinner. She signed the papers. With that signature, Elena crossed an invisible line. Help arrived slowly. A small food allowance, partial rent support, school lunches. But judgment arrived faster. Someone saw her entering the social office. Someone talked. And soon everyone knew. People began to treat her differently. Some looked at her with pity, others with quiet disgust. At the bakery, a woman muttered loud enough for Elena to hear. That's what happens when you can't keep a husband. At school meetings, she noticed empty chairs beside her. Playdate invitations stopped coming. One afternoon, her daughter came home crying. A girl had told her that their family lived on charity, that her mother was a burden. Elena held her child close, rocking gently, whispering that needing help did not mean being weak. But later that night, Elena cried alone in the bathroom. The town had decided who she was, and nothing she said could change that. Then came another blow. Her ex-husband returned briefly to collect some belongings. He arrived in a new coat, with confidence in his voice, and no shame in his eyes. He told Elena he was doing well, that his new partner had a good job, that life was simpler now. He offered no money, no apology, no interest in the children. When Elena asked for support, he shrugged. You chose to keep them. Those words stayed with her for weeks. That evening, Elena sat with her children at dinner, serving thin soup and bread. They laughed anyway, talked about school projects and small dreams. And in that moment, Elena understood something deeply. Her children were not watching how much she provided. They were watching how she stood. So she began to change in quiet ways. She stopped lowering her eyes in public. She stopped apologizing for existing. She volunteered at school when she could, helped other struggling mothers fill out forms, shared meals when someone else had less. People noticed. Not everyone softened, but a few did. An elderly neighbor started leaving vegetables at her door. A teacher began staying late to tutor her son. Another single mother offered childcare so Elena could work extra hours. Slowly, Elena built a small circle of survival. Not comfort, not ease, survival. She was still tired, still judged, still alone in many ways. But she was no longer powerless. Every choice she made now was measured against one question. Does this protect my children? If the answer was yes, she did it. Even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. And soon another test was coming. One that would force Elena to stand publicly in a way she never had before. A moment that would challenge not only her reputation, but her courage. The weeks passed slowly. Elena continued to work, continued to care, continued to build a life that had no room for compromise. She had grown quieter in some ways, more aware of her own limits. But inside something had shifted. Her children were thriving. Her son had a small award for reading. Her daughter had made a painting displayed at school. And Elena could see the pride in their eyes. The pride that came from being loved fiercely and completely. One afternoon, the school principal asked Elena to attend a parents' meeting. A meeting that would discuss support for struggling families. Elena felt a knot in her stomach. She knew people would talk, judge, whisper. She wondered if she could face them. If she could hold herself upright while the town decided who she was. But as she looked at her children, the sleepless nights, the judgment, the fear, and the quiet moments of despair, she remembered the moment she had signed the papers to leave. The moment she had packed her children's small belongings into a bag. The fear in their eyes, and the courage that had grown in her own heart. She smiled softly, because she understood something vital. Love is not measured by public approval, or by reputation. Love is measured by action, by sacrifice, by the courage to put another before yourself. Elena had chosen her children over everything else. Over comfort, over judgment, over the safety of staying silent. And in that choice, she had shown them what true love looked like. Years later, her children had grown. They spoke of their mother with awe, not for her achievements, not for her social standing, but for her courage, for the unshakable way she had chosen them, for the quiet strength that had held their world together. Elena often thought back to those first hard days, to the nights when she feared she had made a mistake, to the times she questioned whether love could really outweigh reputation. And she realized she would choose the same path again, every single time, because the moments of fear, the sacrifices, the quiet struggles, had been worth it. For every smile, every laugh, every whispered "I love you," from her children. In the end, the moral was simple yet profound. True courage is not loud. True love is not about recognition. It is about choosing what matters most even when the world questions you. It is about standing tall in the face of judgment, and showing those you love that they are worth everything. Elena had learned that a mother's heart could carry the weight of the world, that love could break through fear, and that sometimes the only approval you need is the knowledge that you chose right. Her reputation had faded, but her legacy of love, strength, and sacrifice would last forever. And as she watched her children sleep peacefully, she whispered once more, "I chose you," and in that choice, she found a quiet, unshakable triumph, the kind that lasts a lifetime.